These are the questions I want the answers to today. Question 1. Why is it that in the Old Testament you do not find the Trinity mentioned or inferred? And if it was inferred, why haven't the rabbis, the Jewish scholars, for 4,000 years of Hebrew history inferred it?
We go to Benjamin Summer. Look at his qualifications. BA summa cum laude with distinction in philosophy. A PhD with distinction. So I think he's pretty qualified to be classified as a scholar. Let's hear actually what this scholar has to say.
So part of what I ended up realizing as I'm writing this book, rather to my surprise, because I didn't think the research was going to take me in this direction, was that some of what we Jews consider almost pagan Christian ideas have more of a native home in ancient Israelite or biblical thinking. Much to my surprise, and somewhat to my worry, as I researched this book, I realized that some Jewish critiques of Christianity are actually problematic from a Jewish point of view. So for example, I think a lot of Jews sort of think that the idea that God could have a son in human form who is God's son but also is God at the same time, that's somehow just a pagan idea. Similarly, the idea of the Trinity, that God is three but one, the standard Jewish thinking on that tends to be that that's a pagan idea that was taken from the Hellenistic world and sort of smushed onto the Hebrew Bible. What I realized as I was researching this book was that that's really not the case. That the idea of an avatar of a human or some other earthly manifestation of the one heavenly God, it actually does exist in ancient Israelite monotheism. And therefore, the idea of Jesus, the theological model behind the incarnation, is not completely alien to Judaism. Similarly, the idea of the Trinity. Jews tend to think, well, the Trinity means that Christians actually are polytheists. They're kidding themselves, they're not really monotheists, because real monotheism wouldn't have such an idea. But I think in the ancient world, in the ancient Near East, the idea that a single deity could manifest himself or herself multiply was actually, without losing the unity of his or her personhood, that was actually a standard idea. It existed among Babylonian pagans, but it also existed among Israelite monotheists. And thus the model of the Trinity is not in itself necessarily a non-monotheistic or a non-Israelite, a non-biblical idea. But when I use the word Bible, for me, Bible means just what Christians call the Old Testament. It's not for us Jews really a non-biblical idea.
So, all we have to say on that one is
Hadouken!
He wants more Jewish scholars. So we'll go to Philo of Alexandria. We'll see what he says. It says, it is reasonable for one to be three and for three to be one. For they were one by higher principle. In the place of one, he makes the appearance of a triad. He cannot be seen in his oneness without something else. The chief powers that exist immediately with him, the creative, which is called Elohim, and the kingly, which is called Lord. He begins to see the sovereign, holy, and divine vision in such a way that a single appearance appears as a triad, and the triad as a unity. So how come this concept is from the 1st century predating Christianity? Because they always understood there was a plurality in God. But Muhammad's Hijab said, name me one scholar for 4,000 years. So we go to the Zohar. The Zohar is widely considered the most important work of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. It is a mystical commentary on the Torah written in medieval Aramaic and medieval Hebrew. It contains a mystical discussion of the nature of God. The Kabbalah and its teachings, no less than the law, are an integral part of the Torah. Jewish historiography holds that during the time of Roman persecution, Rabbi Simeon hid in a cave for 13 years studying the Torah with his son Eliezer. Let's see what they say in the Zohar. Hear, O Israel, Adonai Elohanu, Adonai is one. These three are one.
Perfect.
Apparently God is Unitarian and he's one. But how come the Kabbalists are saying three are one? How can the three names be one? Only through the perception of faith in the vision of the Holy Spirit, in the holding of the hidden eye alone. The mystery of the audio voice is similar to this. For though it is one, yet it consists of three elements, fire, air and water, which have however become one in the mystery of the voice. Even so it is with the mystery of the threefold divine manifestations designated by Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai, three modes which yet form one unity. So therefore this contradicts that Muslims say Ahad means one. It's clearly Kabbalists are saying there's a plurality within the Godhead. There is this sort of understanding of a threeness in God. Where are they getting these concepts from? Because surely it's not from the Christians, and it's clearly not taken from paganism, because we're clearly seeing Jewish people are admitting within their text there's a threeness of God. So how then did Christians invent the Trinity? How did Paul then invent the Trinity? Doesn't make sense. So therefore, why is it when we saw Shabbir Ali talking?
So Christians began to say that Jesus was the Son of God in a metaphorical sense, because this was possible within the framework of the Bible.
I see.
David was called the Son of God, Solomon the Son of God, Jacob the Son of God, and so on. So it was possible to say Son of God and not depart from monotheism, because you meant Son of God in the sense of a beloved of God, one chosen by God for a specific purpose, and so on. But when the Romans heard this, they thought Son of God, like Caesar is Son of God, literally Son of God.
I see.
And when you thought Jesus was literally Son of God, then you started to think, well, then he must be like his Father. So if his Father is God and he is Son of God, he must be God too. And now, if the two of them are God, but there still has to be one God, how do you put them together and make one God? So this is how the idea of the Trinity gradually evolved over time.
But even from within Jewish texts, they're saying, hey, actually, hold on, there is a triune nature, and this is where the Christians got it from. So how can then Muslims say we got this from paganism? Because they're clearly lying to Muslims and not giving them this information. How was it I was able to find this out? But when they talk about the Trinity, no Muslim apologist ever mentions this. How is it? They're clearly deceiving the people. So, this guy, for 4,000 years, he has gone from looking like this to looking like this, because clearly he should never go on the podium again.